link here. Oh, good. We're on the link where we're supposed to be, Jake. That's a bonus from yesterday. It makes it better. I'm just double checking that our loyal viewers should be able to see us, and then we will be good to go. Yep, there we are. We are live. Look at that. I gotta get Josh to teach me how to put the little music up and the blank screen so I don't have to fill the air, because sometimes I gotta fill the air for a long time when I figure out where the hell the link went. But here we are. It's your old pal Emac coming to you with one. Jake Hari, no, it's not NHL. It's Sunday Fun Day, MLB. Jake, tell us how your day went. Last day of regular season hockey. I'm pulling up some windows here, and then Jake and I are going to go through all the early games. Not to fear, we started a little early because we got somewhere where we got to be, but we're going to break down all the games through 2 o'clock, no problem. And then I've got office hours in Slack at 3 o'clock. Happy to talk baseball there, and we've got projections and all sorts of other good stuff. But Jake, final day of hockey. I think you mentioned you were dialing it in.
Yeah, it seems like I was telling you about it right before we got on. Just you win the big one, or you have a good night right as like the day before you can't play anymore. So you're itching to play. You got some extra money in your account, and then you can't play NHL. But luckily we have MLB to talk about. A couple slates. We're talking Maine. Did you say we're just talking Maine, or are we talking?
Yeah, well, we can hit on the 3-4 o'clock games.
I don't have much for the 3 o'clock games. I think there's only 3 of them.
Yeah, there's only 3, and it's not great pitching. I've got a stacks article up talking about the stacks. It's going to mostly be mixing and matching. I would play low dollar stuff, so we're not holding back on that one. And even last night, 2 of the pitchers hadn't even been announced yet, so it's a little dicey there. But we do have an 11 gamer here for the main slate. So,
yeah. It looks like a pretty good slate. I like all these pitchers. So narrowing it down, I think, is going to be the maybe the issue for me, but a lot to like as far as pitching. And when that happens, I feel like I'm always excited to play. And I know you like diving into the pitchers as well.
Yep, absolutely. All right, we're letting people trickle in here. Just a reminder, if you have not yet signed up for Osmo, you can use promo code live before lock, all one word, get 50% off any 1-month package. You can in fact use the Fantasy Cruncher add-on as part of that. And then the other bonus is if you use up through, I believe it's tomorrow, you can still use promo code MLB early bird, all one word, and get $50 off of the season-long package for baseball. So that's going to work out to not even $1 a day. So definitely worthwhile. And for me, that's like a newspaper subscription or a magazine subscription. We don't do those anymore, of course, because we have the internet. But I subscribe to a couple other sites for different things, just because I like to read it. So I like to hear what other people have to say. This is exciting for me. So I do for baseball. For basketball and NFL, I generally don't, because I think we have content that's second to none. But for baseball, I can just never get enough, Jake. I like to hear what everybody has to say about everything, be it ESPN Insider or some of the other that aren't non-fantasy websites. I like to hear what some of the other fantasy guys have to say, etc. For me, I love anything baseball. So that's my version of going to the movies these days, shall we say.
And we've got some really good guys on our team too. So outside of Alex and Tom, the guys in front of the camera, I think, are really awesome. And I'm watching chat in YouTube, and they're saying Adam and Lafayette are like the only ones I'll listen to. That's pretty smart, I think. If you're only listening to those guys, I think you're doing okay as far as MLB DFS goes. I don't know if there's anyone really better than those two.
I would agree with that. The other thing, especially, and for basketball too. So if we're looking at being well-rounded, I think Adam is probably the best analyst out there across those 2 sports combined. And he is someone, if I wasn't, if I didn't get the Osmo content because I work here, I would be paying for it. And I don't say that about a lot of other people. And I would pay for his basketball stuff for sure.
Oh, yeah.
In addition to baseball. Baseball, I just love to consume it for everybody. But if I only had one subscription, it would definitely be wherever Adam is. And hey, he's with Osmo. So
yeah, pretty lucky there. I don't even play basketball, but I know those guys. All our guys do a really good job. So nice to see the chat saying mostly kind words about everyone.
Absolutely. All right, I've got most of my stuff up here. Let me get one more page up. I'll be working in my crunches here. Lineups were still coming in as I was getting this stuff ready, but I'll have some of those going on throughout the show. Of course, we'd have looks like most of the lineups are in, so that will be very helpful with regards to what we're chasing down here. Let me see who we are awaiting for, because hopefully I just have to put everything in once. Looks like the Nationals are being a little persnickety with us, so we don't have them. And then we don't have Milwaukee. And then we don't have San Diego and the Cardinals. So not bad for 10 after 11. We're only missing 4 out of the 22 teams that we've got going. So let's jump on in here. Jake, let's start off with our first one here. We're going to go with, let's go Baltimore and New York. So this one is, it's kind of intriguing. So Baltimore's been pretty bad. Not bad news bears bad, but just pretty bad from an offensive perspective, from a pitching perspective, with the exception of David Hess, who is magical when going against Toronto. He has now had 3 phenomenal starts. I think he's had 4 phenomenal starts in his career, and 3 of them have come at the expense of Toronto. So he's sitting there with about a 500 batter sample size over his last 2 seasons in the majors. He has a 5.5 xFIP. Yikes! He has an 8.1% walk rate. Not quite up to double digits, but his strikeout rate's not going to be doing a ton of things to erase any of his mistakes, because it's just at 16.5%. He's relatively poop-tastic against both lefties and righties. Lefties do have a little bit more power, but righties are right there with them. So I think we're going to be looking to the Yankees here, Jake, but the Yankees are missing half of an all-star team already. They still have a good lineup, but now it's finally starting to get watered down. I mean, you have Clint Frazier in a prominent role. DJ LeMahieu is now being counted on rather than a utility infielder. What do you want to do here? I'm assuming no Hess, but yes to some of these Yankees. So walk us through your initial look.
Yeah, I mean, Hess just some real issues with lefties. So, you see this lineup, and it's actually not that bad for Hess if you're thinking about playing him. He's super, super cheap. Like, he's probably going to come up in a couple lineups for me. I wouldn't get to him ever if I was hand building here. But crunching, I'm sure I'm going to have a couple shares just because low ownership and seeing a bunch of righties. So I think there's a path to some success, at least for that price. But still, like, these righties are pretty tough, like Voit, Judge, obviously Sanchez. I love Gleyber Torres just in general. And then like LeMahieu's going to put the ball in play as well. So even though it's a bunch of righties, I still don't think it's like some cake matchup, but maybe not a great job by the Yankees throwing out this lineup, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it was just, a bit of a Sunday lineup. We've seen most teams have had just one day off thus far, and then everybody played on Saturday. Everybody but one team played on Friday. I think actually the Yankees. Is that? Yeah, Friday was a random slate. Maybe it was not quite everybody, because there was like 4. There was a 2 o'clock game, 3 4 o'clock games, and then I think it was like 8 7 o'clock games. I've never quite seen that on a Friday before. That was a non-holiday Friday. But in any event, there are a lot more early games because the weather's not as nice as it will be later in the year. And, of course, school is still in session. So just keep an eye throughout the slate and any of the getaway days. Just know that those early games you're going to have, potentially a utility infielder gets in, the 4th or 5th outfielder get a spot, the backup catcher, etc. So keep an eye on that one. On the other side of this one, we've got Domingo Germán going against Baltimore. Baltimore has just been not good outside of Trey Mancini, who apparently has the new deal with the devil that Chris Davis let lapse a couple years ago. But Mancini's been outstanding. And then they got a bunch of kids here. Yeah, veteran bat in VR, but then I think Davis is just in the lineup because they're paying him, $180 million a year or something like that. Slightly facetious, but everybody else is pretty much a kid. So I like Germán here. He is not super expensive. He's not a cheap gimme either. He is inconsistent as heck, but he has an amazing strikeout repertoire. He just cannot harness it consistently. He gets in trouble with walks. He tries to get too cute and throws extra pitches that he doesn't really need to because he's going for the strikeouts, etc. But over his last 500 batters, Jake, he's got a 28% strikeout rate. I'm going to be going to Herman today. Where are you putting him in the pantheon of your pitching? Is he an SP1 or an SP2? And then is there anybody you'd even consider from the Orioles?
I think he's somewhere in the middle of SB1, SB2. Like, you can make an argument for either side. He's kind of priced up a little bit. He threw 79 pitches in his first start, 7 Ks and 5 walks. So he really kind of jams in everything in those pitches. When he's on, he can be efficient, and he's just mowing guys down. Looks like just 4 righties kind of stacked near the bottom of the order here for the Oilers. So Orioles. So they did a
Houston Oilers #1, Jake. Come on.
Oilers, yeah. I'm still in hockey.
Oh, Edmonton. I'm sorry, Edmonton. I went for the old school NFL, but you're right, Edmonton.
Our friends up north.
Sorry for McDavid last night too, by the way.
His X-rays came back negative, I think.
Okay,
I didn't see the injury, but I did see someone in chat was saying that he had a pretty nasty look.
It didn't look good.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to Herman. Sorry. And the Orioles.
He's projected to be just super low owned, so I'll take the ownership discount that you get with Herman. Like, he's a guy who can strike out 10 guys in 5 or 6 innings, especially this team. He had a 20% swinging strike rate, I think, versus Detroit. Like, I put Baltimore as probably the worst team in the MLB, so similarly good matchup. And if he can get to 85, 90 pitches here, I think he's more than okay for 9,400 and 2% ownership, if that's going to stick.
All right. I think that's going to wrap up this game. So let's see what else we have. The Minnesota Jakes, actually, funny enough, they are up next. We have Jose Berrios going against Philadelphia. He does not have to contend with the DH, but he does have a smaller ballpark here. And let's look at that Phillies lineup. Oh, wait, am I on the right page? There we go. Oh, Harper is in the lineup. I was hoping Harper would get a day off here at some point. So not the easiest matchup going against Philly here, but Jose does have an intriguing skill set. He's fantastic at limiting power, which is nice, and will do him well against this lineup. He does a great job of getting strikeouts. He has a reasonably low walk rate, but he gets himself into jams still from time to time. It's like he loses focus, and that's when he gets into trouble. I think he's on a fringe SP1 today. How are you liking the Fightin' Jakes today?
The Fightin' Jakes. Yeah, I think he's just a little bit overpriced. Philly, awesome, just deep lineup, I think. I don't know that there's a ton of strikeouts here with McCutchen, Segura, Harper. So I think it's just pretty tough here for Berrios. I'd rather pay down a little bit for Herman, I think. And it looks like he's going to be as high, or, they're going to be similarly low owned. So for me, like, I'll take what I think is huge K upside. For Herman, I think Berrios could be fine. Maybe not targeting a ton of Phillies bats, but he also has huge home road splits now that I think of it. So Harper was kind of my main guy, but if you do believe in those home road splits, maybe you take a chance at some Philly stacks. I mean, this is a really fun lineup to stack, to put it lightly.
Yeah, it absolutely is. As a Nationals fan, while I'm sad to not have Harper, I'm trying to think of how many postseason victories he led the Nationals to. Not that many. So enjoy that one, Philly. He's a phenomenal player, but he will get hurt at some point.
Sound bitter,
I'm guessing. Maybe a little bit, just a little bit. But who can fault him for that kind of money? And by the way, who can fault him for that length of contract? I mean, he went all in. So he is definitely a guy who wears his heart on his sleeve. He is definitely a fun player to watch. So enjoy, because he's probably going to play about 135 games for you throughout his career per season. In any event, love the lineup with him and Hoskins. You get that amazing guys, both good against lefties and righties. They're one lefty, one righty. They're kind of a stopper if any of the managers try to get cute, the opposing managers late in the game, and bring in relievers, because they're going to have to shake things up. So it's a little bit of a mix here. I think we're okay with looking to some Philly hitters just because they are good enough. That will give me some pause for Barrios. So I'm probably going to have about 20% of Barrios. And I see someone is asking in chat. I know Jake and I right now are both playing pretty heavy on DraftKings. We'll do towards the end. We'll make sure to call out a few different good FanDuel plays as well.
Sure.
Just because I know a lot of people play over there. But the bulk of the general things that we're going to be talking about is going to apply to all sites. And then you're going to have to determine, are you going cheap at pitching? Are you looking for a big bat? Are you looking to stack one of the top teams? What are you using for your complementary stack, et cetera? There are just so many ways to go in baseball that it's hard to literally cover everything. But that's why, behind the paywall here, we've got ownership projections for the sites. We have projections, performance projections for everybody, and that is a good way to go. Plus, you get access to all of us in Slack chat, and that is very, very helpful as well. So anyway, back to this one. Anything else you want to mention from this particular combination, or shall we look at the Minnesota side going against Zach Eflin, who was pretty good in his last outing? He has been damn good against righties. He's been abysmal against lefties. You've got 4 lefties in this lineup. Kepler and Rosario are going to be 2 of my favorite. You've got the pesky, as always, Marwin Gonzalez, who's a switch hitter and plays pretty much every position except pitcher and catcher. And then you've got your punt de jour catcher, Jason Castro. You were basically playing him for a home run, but he's 34 on DK, 65 on Fantasy Draft, and 7 on Yahoo. I do not mind him batting 7th at the near minimum. Again, you're playing him for a home run. What do you like or dislike from this side of the matchup?
First of all, I don't like Eflin. I'm not a believer just yet, even though I think the Twins are probably a team you can attack at most points this season, even when they're rolling out their full lineup. So yeah, he's fine against righties. He's bad against lefties. If you look at his numbers from last year, maybe he's improved. I'm sure he has a little bit, made some adjustments in the offseason, but I really like Rosario and Kepler here. So that's really what I'll be looking at here. I just can't pay 8,100 for Eflin yet. So could prove me wrong. I just think it's a little bit too early to, and we just saw one start and he was really good, but I'm not buying it quite yet.
Yeah, and that, I think, is a reasonable assessment here. And not to bury the lead, we've got Scherzer on this slate. So that's, it's going to be, how can you get him in your lineup? What are you willing to forego, et cetera? I think if on both, I would do everything I could to get him on my lineup at FanDuel. Full stop. On DraftKings, probably want to get him in your lineup if you're playing cash games. I don't think he's a must, but he's damn near as close as you can get. I don't think there are that many must pitchers, but this particular matchup is there for him. For tournaments on DraftKings, you can go a variety of ways because you're going to have to, if you go with Scherzer, you're not going to like where your stacks end up, or you're going to hate your second pitcher. So you'll want to play more combinations of lineups. But just know that as we're marching towards these games, that's coming here because let's see, that game starts at 1:10, so it'll come up in our next set of games. Let's look to Kansas City and Detroit here in, I don't know, Tyson Ross, frustrating pitcher. 4 seasons ago, oh God, is it 5 now, Jake? I was leading the FanDuel live qualifier $10 entry
tournament.
Not the
postponement game.
No, I actually had to watch Tyson Ross before people knew you could steal on him, shut down teams back to back, one on a Friday and then one on a Saturday in consecutive weeks. I came in second and third in those, and I only had 3 or 4 lineups in each one because I don't play at that level. I didn't play a ton of volume, but yeah, he's the bane of my existence. Two shots at that 2014 FanDuel Live final, but such is life. In any event, I'm not always rational with him, and that does extend to his brother, who is with the Nationals. But he is a talented pitcher when healthy. He is healthy now, and he is going against he's going against a Kansas City squad that is pesky, but not terrifying. And Ross has worked through some of his stolen base issues as well. Now you've got some ace guys here with Hamilton, Merrifield, and Mondesi. They can run on anybody. Can they get on base? Well, I don't know about Billy Hamilton. The other two might be able to, but there's not a lot of power here going against Ross, with the exception of O'Hearn and Duda. And those guys, tend to be free swingers and have a little trouble getting consistent contact. So Ross is in the mix for me as an SP2. I've got him set at just 10% on DK. I'm running about 170 lineups, it looks like. But he's one of the guys I'm letting come into the mix. Do you like Ross at all? Let me see. Are you at least tepid on Ross? And if you're going with any of the KC crowd, is it mostly going to be Merrifield, Mondesi, O'Hearn, etc.?
Yeah, I could probably have made a case for Ross before I looked at the ownerships. And Alex's, or the projections we have on the site that Alex plays a big role in, they like Ross. So I was getting to a little bit of him, but have you seen his ownership?
I have not yet. I'm just getting ready to load that in.
He is right now the highest owned player.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So perfect. So let's segue into that for just a second, because this is the DFS strategy show, Jake. So like yesterday, Dylan Bundy was one of the most popular plays on both sites. And it's Dylan Bundy. He gave up 41 home runs last year. It's not good Dylan Bundy. He was facing the Yankees. This is a slightly different situation, but anything can happen in baseball, and these guys could put some hits together. They get a couple of doubles with ducks on the pond, and they can put up a crooked number against Ross. With his inconsistency, that becomes someone where I don't want to be anywhere near the field. Because I'm playing so many lineups, I'll still cap him around 10%. But when you're in this situation, do you want to double down on the leverage? What are you going to do with regards to Kansas City stacks going against one of the more popular and highly volatile pitchers that we've got on the slate?
Yeah. So you mentioned Mondesi and Merrifield. I think just hitting and stolen base wise, I was trying to look at Tyson Ross. You said that he had fixed, or he is working on his
better. He is still not. I don't think I haven't looked this year, but I haven't rememorized it. I think he's approaching league average, whereas before he was god awful. Should have been an honorary member of the Mets kind of status.
Okay. Wow.
So compared to that, he's getting better. Compared to the average guy, yeah, you can still run on him.
Yeah, I think you can still run on him. I don't know that he's like the best in the league or anything at holding runners all of a sudden. So as long as he's not that, I think there is, of course, some stolen base upside for Mondesi and Merrifield. And then I like Mondesi's matchup at the plate as well. Gordon's super cheap. And then O'Hearn's a guy who always grades out really, really well for me against righties, especially righties that give up a lot of hard contact like Tyson Ross. So I was interested in the KC stack. You stack against the chalk cheap pitcher, you're going to get automatically a different lineup construction and huge leverage on the field if the stack indeed does go off. So I'm all over KC now looking at this ownership. Yeah, they're probably one of my favorite stacks in the entire day.
All right, and we'll loop back on stacks as well, because we now have lineups for all of the games on the main slate, which is good. I'm certain we'll get a popularity percentage update as well as projection updates here shortly, since those last couple came out. So we'll be sure to rank stacks kind of as we get to the end here. A little bit longer on that game than I'd expected, but we do want to, this is the combination live before lock because it's our only show on Sunday, but it's also still the strategy show, and we'll throw out the nuggets like that on how you should approach different stuff. And that works not only for just people that are doing the mass multi-entry, but that works in 3-max. It works in hand-built stuff as well. It's making a stand, figuring out if this outcome is in play, how can you make it even more advantageous for yourself? Because the one thing about baseball is, you can spend bucks deluxe on, Scherzer or Sale or whomever. They could conceivably go negative. You could spend everything on Mike Trout, and he can go 0 for 4. So it's just a highly, highly variant sport. So you almost go into it saying, all right, I'm okay with losing whatever I have. Now, how can I leverage it? Because, frankly, making 1.5% of my buy-in or 2 times my buy-in is not that exciting. I want a shot at the brass ring. Now, for me, I want a shot at 5x, 10x. I don't play in the large enough contests where I'm going to be getting 5-figure scores. but I love to play in the leagues, and all of a sudden, turning your $10 into 120 by playing in 4 or 5 smaller contests, very doable on these slates. And there's that does add up rapidly after a while. Let's go on to the next game here. Toronto going against Clevenger. Clevenger has. I saw this funny GIF of him. He like hops around on the mound. It's kind of funny. I'll have to go look for that. But anyway, he has been burst onto the scene here and been a very, very good pitcher. He's going against Toronto today. Toronto has some nice underlying numbers if we look back over the last 2 seasons, Jake. But they've sort of disappeared in major. I kept going to him, and outside of David Hess, who's magical against him, they have not really performed well against anybody. They're not that scary. We now have Justin Smoke scratched. He's been dealing with, I can't remember if it's a sore back or sore neck, but that's like 3 days in a row where he's been in the first initial lineup, and then he's been pulled. But Freddie Galvis batting second? Really? McKinney? Hansen? Is that the same Hansen from San Francisco that could barely crack their lineup? Now he's... Pardon?
Is it Allen with one
L? Yeah, it's Allen with one L. Hansen, you are correct.
Yeah.
He's near minimum on FanDuel. He's 4K on DK. I don't want to pay 4K for him. He's more like a near minimum guy. But batting 7th, really? Just yeah. All of a sudden, Clevenger's vaulting up into like the non-Scherzer division list of pitchers. He's probably number 2. So 3 overall for me on the slate. Talk to me a little bit about Clevenger with this mostly watered down lineup, because are you afraid of Socrates Brito?
No. Yeah, the lefties are pretty rough here outside of like Tellis and McKinney, I think are both fine. Maybe if Clevenger was going to be super chalky, those might be guys I would get to as 2-mans or one-offs here. But yeah, it's just pretty much going to be a bunch of Clevenger for me, it looks like, if I'm not getting up to Scherzer. So almost 10K. I don't know. That might scare some people off. And maybe that's why his ownership is under 20% right now. That may come up a little bit. But yeah, it's just a really rough lineup for the Blue Jays. They haven't been able to hit at all. And Clevenger just so good against righties that I think the strikeout upside is definitely there. So no problem paying up for Clevenger here.
All right. And for those of you behind the paywall, we just got the projection update with everybody in the lineup here. And Clevenger is checking in as the head and shoulders number 2 pitcher. Scherzer is definitely in a class of his own, but Clevenger is looking very, very, very solid.
And one more thing about Clevenger too. He threw 106 pitches in his last start, which you don't often see this early in the season. So that's one thing I'll look for, just like how many pitches are these guys able to throw if things are going well, no matter, especially when you're paying up almost 10K for a guy. Like, you need those extra 5 to 10 pitches. That could be the difference between another strikeout, which could be the difference between you getting first in a tournament and 8th in a tournament type of thing. So, I really like to see that 106.
All right. Marcus Stroman. Now, he's an interesting fella. He has an amazing ground ball rate. And by amazing, I mean literally 63% combined versus lefties and righties. He's 65 against lefties, 60 against righties. That is just phenomenal. His walk rate is reasonable. He gets the occasional strikeout, but he just doesn't have me doing cartwheels. The one thing that we have in our favor, Jake, is this is no longer the same Cleveland lineup that we're used to seeing. There is no Francisco Lindor. He's dinged up. Why am I blanking on his name? Ramirez is batting second, but he's been dealing with some issues. Santana is probably their second best hitter, and we're looking at Pawlicki, Allen, Miller playing prominent roles, and I didn't even get to the number 9 hitter, Stamets. How do you consider Stroman as an SP2 today, where we're going to need to find some savings?
So I've only run a couple crunches so far, and I haven't done the updated ownership just yet. So I'm not exactly sure where I'll be on Stroman, but he's 2% owned right now in the first update. So if he's 2% against this Cleveland lineup, I I agree. I don't think it's that great of a lineup. I mean, you've got Jose Ramirez in there, who of course you respect, and then Santana and Bowers. I think the middle of the lineup is okay, but the bottom is pretty rough. And
Yeah,
I
I
know,
mean, Kipnis is on the injured list. You've
yeah,
got no Brantley's now with Houston. I mean, this is Yonder Alonso, Edwin Encarnacion not there. This is a dramatically different lineup.
yeah. So, I mean, I'm okay with it. I don't have him right now, but there's kind of a bunch of pitchers in this like 6 to 8K range that I'm just gonna mix and match um, with a guy like Scherzer. So he'll probably be one of them. That being said, I also do like I mentioned, Ramirez, Bowers, and Santana, 2, 3, 4.
All right, let's keep hopping along here. Our next game, hey, it's the Washington Nationals. It is the New York Mets. We've hinted at it, but Scherzer is without a peer on this slate. You're going to be paying for it, though. You're paying the big prices. Now, one of the things that we know is he does have the propensity to give up some home runs against lefties. Last year, it was a little more splits neutral, but I still think that those lefty tendencies are there. It's because he challenges every freaking batter. He has a 34% combined strikeout rate over his last 1,600 batters faced. That is otherworldly. This is why this guy's got multiple Cy Youngs. He has a 3.3 xFIP. That's just almost unheard of for a sample size that large. 6.6% walk rate. He just doesn't let people make contact because he is, he's got a 30% hard contact rate, Jake, followed up by a 22% soft contact rate. It means he gets more soft contact for a guy who throws so bleeping hard. They can't get good solid wood on the ball. So when they do, you see it go out of the park, but that happens so rarely. I'm not worried about it. The only guys I think that could poke one out would be the ever pesky Robinson Cano and Michael Conforto. That's it. The rest of this lineup is okay, but not against Scherzer. So for me, you'll hear us talk about hedge stacks or balancing things out. I won't try to get any pitcher or hitters going against Scherzer in this particular matchup. I'll just let them fall out of my crunch, and I won't do anything to goose it because I just think it's that good of a spot for Scherzer. I think if it goes sideways, I don't know who it's going to be by. And yeah, Scherzer's 0-2, but he's already dominated this team once. Don't worry about the wins. Look at the strikeouts. So
Yeah.
There we go. Sorry, one of my favorite players. Now, I will take a step back. You can talk about the Mets. You can talk about Scherzer. If you want to hit up on Zach Wheeler, the world is yours right now, Jake.
I mean, you basically took the words out of my mouth. Like he might give up a solo home run or two, but the strikeouts are certainly going to be there. Or you would think they're going to be here. So under 12K, like if this was a start in June, I think he's probably 13K here. So I think you're actually getting a little bit of a discount on Scherzer, but nothing really holding me back as far as like the massive upside, the 35, 40 point upside here. And he's really the only one on the slate that I think has that kind of huge upside. So nothing wrong with Scherzer. I don't really ever have anything interesting to say with him. He's just incredible. So hopefully he can deal with the top of the lineup and then just rack up Ks against Ramos, Davis, Rosario, Broxton, because there are a lot in there. And then pitcher spot, of course, as well.
It's the gift that keeps on giving. On the other side here, looking to the Nationals, much different lineup than we've seen in the past. Of course, as we mentioned, no Bryce Harper. Daniel Murphy's in Colorado. Of course, he has a broken finger. Trey Turner, he's in Washington still. He's got a broken finger. So you're looking at, Adam Eaton while he's healthy. Anthony Rendon, who I keep saying fringe. He deserves to be mentioned. He won't win the MVP, but he's in that fringe. He should be receiving a votes this year. And then you've got the amazing Juan Soto, who is now 20 years old and just absolutely phenomenal. And then the ever pesky Ryan Zimmerman. I'm okay with these guys against Wheeler. I ran my pitchers uncapped at this point. I capped my stacks at 15%, Jake, because as I'm just casting out the wide net, I want to see what's coming up to the top. And in these cases, I'm getting 60% Scherzer, but that also means I'm not getting as many of the big stacks. But I just have a 3% Washington 4-man stacks, and so I ran 100 lineups just so I could keep the percentages nicely. I have one 3-man stack of Washington. I'm just not getting to these guys because of where their price points are today. I'm okay with that. There's a lot of games on the slate, and I'm going to make a few stands here and there. So not really much else for me to say here. But if you have anything to add, please do so.
Yeah, I cast just my play style. If people aren't familiar, I also cast like a wide range, and I stack quite a few teams, like almost half the teams. Washington's not really coming up for me based on how I grade out Wheeler. I just think he's a really solid pitcher. Like you look at his second half numbers last year, he was really, really good down the stretch for a bad Mets team. So there's no one in particular I really love here on the Nats, and that's kind of showing in what I'm getting in my crunches so far. So kind of an avoid spot all around. I'm also not getting to a bunch of Wheeler. I think I got 2% in my last crunch. So just kind of avoiding that and hoping it stays pretty quiet.
All right, so let's see what we got. Oh, good guy. We got about six games left? Okay, we can hit these relatively quickly. Some of them we're not going to have as many exciting things to say, but talking about Miami, Atlanta, I do like Sean Newcomb. I think he has some nice talent. He has yet to build on it, but his strikeout rate is absolutely phenomenal. In his first 1,100 career hitters faced, he is striking out 27% of lefties, 22% of righties. So we like to see that. This is an entirely righty lineup today for the Marlins. But if we go back over their last 2 seasons of data, they have 2 people with more than a 130 isolated power. That would be Lewis Brinson, who is, not really going to scare anybody, and he's batting 5th. So most teams he would be batting 8th or 9th. And then you've got Pete O'Brien, who has some pop, but that's really about his only redeeming quality. I'm not scared by these guys. Newcomb is someone that is creeping up on my list of pitchers that I really like, and I'm getting to. I'm looking at ours here. Sorry, we have so many ways to filter this. Newcomb is only 8%, so I'm probably going to be 2 or 3 times the field on this one at 8,700. That's one of the spots where I'm willing to take a stand, where I would not go to Zach Wheeler. I would probably flip most of that interest over there to Newcomb. What do you like here with Newcomb? Because coming up still, we have Chris Archer, we've got Brad Peacock, we've got Kyle Hendricks, we've got a few other people that are kind of in this mid tier that we may need to peel some of our ownership off to.
Yeah, I think Newcomb should get the win here. He should roll. The problem is a bunch of righties, and this is a guy that I believe he's got real walk issues, if I'm thinking of the correct guy. Yeah.
Hell, if you do 12% combined walk rate, I mean, it's double digits and, double what we'd like to see. But yeah, I guess if you're gonna rain on my parade, Jay. Geez.
Yeah, that's the only issue with him really ever. Like when he's in his groove, I think he can handle all these righties. The question is, which Newcomb are you going to see? Doesn't give up a ton of hard contact to righties. The Marlins, if you look at their numbers, even going back to last year, I think 81 WRC plus against lefties, and that's when they had Real Muto. So none of these guys really scary. I mean, Brinson and maybe Castro, like Anderson, I think are all okay against lefties. But yeah, there's no real landmines. It's just whether or not Newcomb is going to walk a bunch of guys here. That's really always the issue with him for me.
All right, we just got the ownership update, so you'll want to
see where he's at. Maybe I'll change my tune one way or the other on him.
Not a lot changed. I think most of the projected lineups came in around where they were expected. So I'm going to get that into Fantasy Cruncher, and we already got the regular projections, so I'm good to go here. So I can speak to this stuff. But Newcomb is coming in at, what is he? He is at 9%.
That's pretty low.
That's rather low.
I mean, if he's going to be 9% and he's cheaper than like Archer and Wheeler, Clevenger by quite a bit, like I'm okay definitely taking some shots there. I figured he'd be chalky just because it's the Marlins. He's a big favorite. He is a guy that people, it seems like, have positive feelings towards around the industry. So I'm kind of surprised at 10% ownership for him, or under 10%.
Yep, I'm going to set him. I'm going to double that. You know what? I'm going to triple that as my cap, so I'm okay with that.
a note on Ross. I know some people were saying, how could Ross be chalky? It looks like he's still going to be pretty chalky. Around 20% is what we have him projected for. So there you have it. Play some Tyson Ross chalk, I suppose.
I am setting Tyson Ross at 5%.
He is coming up for me.
He was at 28% for me here, so I'm going 1/3. I'm going 8%. There we go.
Just how often does he kill you here is the question with him. Like $5,500 pitcher, if he gets 22, like he's going to be the nut pitcher on the slate, assuming one of these high priced pitchers gets 30, which is probably going to happen. So
actually, this is a good talking point, and you bring that up very nicely. On DraftKings in particular, the $5,500 pitcher is like the holy grail, because it's very hard to submarine you unless you go negative. They're 5,500 for a reason. But if he gets 10, 11 points, you're doing cartwheels. So in a situation like that, would you instead say, all right, you know what? I don't really want to go over the field on him, but how I'm going to get my leverage is I'll match the field, but I'm making sure I have some specific stacks against him, sort of as your insurance policy. How do you handle something like that where the price today with Scherzer is really going to come into play? And I think a Scherzer-Ross pairing is probably lifting Ross's percentage by probably a good third, would be my guess.
No, I think, so there's a couple ways to be contrarian here with Ross. So if you have a portfolio of lineups, if you play a bunch of lineups, you should have some KC stacks against him if you're playing him significantly. So no matter what I do, I'm definitely going to have some KC stacks. I'll probably have some Ross, whether I match the field or go a little above or a little below is a different question. But I think if you do choose to play some Ross, just make sure in those lineups you have lowish owned players. Just to get yourself a different lineup construction. So that's why I think our ownership projections are so useful. Like you can see, you take a couple 5% owned hitters. You don't need to take all 1% owned hitters and play 7, 8, 9 in all these lineups. Just make sure you've got some differentiation in your Tyson Ross lineups if you do choose to play him.
All right. Getting back to the games, Caleb Smith, lefty, going against Atlanta. I love Caleb Smith. I think he's incredibly talented. You'll hear Laffy gushing about him as well. This is not the place to play him. Going against Albies, the finally healthy Josh Donaldson, Acuna, Freddie Freeman is phenomenal against lefties. Johan Camargo has sneaky power, and he's batting fifth. If you want someone to play for a little bit of home run upside, I think he's got like outfield eligibility in. I can't remember if it's shortstop or third base, but depending on the site you're playing on, you might find him at some of the different positions. I don't really want any Caleb Smith here. Where am I with regards to Bravo's stacks? Shockingly, I did not get any Braves 4-man stacks or 3-man stacks at this point, Jake. But I don't want to go to Caleb Smith. Thoughts on this portion of the matchup?
So if Caleb Smith is going to be higher owned, I think I would probably be with you. But like I'll play 10 to 15% of Smith here. I just think he's underpriced. He's not an under 8K pitcher on DK. So if you're going like double mid tier, you're playing Archer Smith combo, something like that. Like, I don't know that he's got massive upside, but you're also not paying top dollar for him. Super tough matchup. Can't argue with that. Like even the lefties, or I guess Markakis isn't in, but like Freeman's really tough against lefties. He does strike out though a little bit. Smith, you just look at what he does in some of these starts, 20+% swinging strike rate in his first start. So he's just a guy I'm a big fan of, and he's going to be a couple percent owned, it looks like. So I'll easily go over the field on him. I'll take more Smith shares and or I'll allocate some of the otherwise would be Ross shares and go and pay up to a guy like Smith, who I think just no one's going to be on, and he's just far too talented for that, I think.
Okay, that is absolutely fair. Again, many ways to approach daily fantasy baseball. Our next matchup here, we have Cincinnati at Pittsburgh. You've got Anthony Desclafani, who, I don't know. He is an intriguing windup in pitching style, but he pretty much gets his ass literally handed to him by every lefty he faces. Now, he's going against Frazier. Not a ton of power, but he is leading off. He's got the switch hitting Josh Bell, who has reasonable power. He is batting cleanup. And then he's got Jason Martin, who is he even? I don't have any real background on Jason Martin here, so looks like he's must be one of their newer guys. That's it for the lefties. Oh well, Melky Cabrera, I guess. And that's all you need to know about Melky Cabrera. Will he be going to Desclafani because he's getting so many righties here?
I don't have an issue with it.
They don't strike out though. Pittsburgh just doesn't strike out.
Yeah, that's the thing. So Pittsburgh may not be great, but there's not a ton of strikeouts if you look at these guys. Like I'm pulling it up right now. I know off the top of my head, like Bell doesn't strike out a lot, neither does Cervelli. And this is against right-handed pitching.
Oh yeah, they're all literally like the highest is Cervelli at 21%. Everybody else is like 17 or below.
So just guys that are going to put the ball in play. Some from the left side as well that are going to put the ball in play against Desclafani. I think I'd rather play Pirates bats than get to Desclafani, and it looks like that's reflected in my first couple runs at lineups here.
Yeah, please 1% owned. So among those bats, it's the top 5 guys that you're looking at. If you get and I throw in Young Ho Gang, he sat out last year, so he was had some issues with breaking the law in Korea, so he had to stay in South Korea last year. So. But in any event, I think he's okay. But I'd focus on the top 4 guys. The other guys, if they come into my lineup, so be it. But we do have a lot of games here, and I'm not really chasing after them. On the other side here, we've got Chris Archer. He is healthy. He is talented when he's healthy. This is a guy that all last season we kept saying, Jake, he's not really healthy. This move to Pittsburgh is not really benefiting him. What's going on? Yeah, he's not in Tropicana Field anymore, but he doesn't have to face the designated hitter. He's not going through the gauntlet that is the AL East. I'm ready to play him because he's healthy, but he is not really popping up in my lineups thus far today. He's coming in. I ran it uncapped. He's coming in at 5% of my lineups, probably because he's 9,300. He's 10% in the field. That feels about right. There will be spots I think we want to go after him. This just doesn't happen to be one of them against the Reds.
Yeah. I thought I would get to a bunch more Archer. I'm like right around the field if he's around the 5 to 10% range. He is a super high upside arm when he's got his best stuff. It looks like the Reds did a good job going righty lefty in their lineup. So I don't know. I don't think it's a great lineup to attack, but you look at the Reds numbers so far this season and it's super short sample, but a 32 WRC plus against righties, like 25% K rate. They shouldn't be that bad. I'm trying to pull up their numbers from last season, and they look fine. Plus, they've added Puig against righties, who obviously he can hit righties pretty well. So, yeah, I just don't think it's a perfect spot for Archer. So, 9,300, I think you're paying close to top dollar for what you're going to see for him this year. I'd rather allocate my shares elsewhere.
All right. Shout out to Ronald in the premium chat. He does say, hey, Emac, Jason Martin has some decent power and can steal some bags. Reminds me of a couple other Pittsburgh prospects once upon a time, named by the name of Marte, Polanco, and McCutcheon. So there you go. Perhaps he will follow in their footsteps. Moving along here to our next one.
Nice when chat's helpful.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so much to know, and we're just getting into the finishing up baseball and hockey, and we've got all sorts of stuff that we need to rememorize and relearn and familiarize ourselves once again with here with MLB. That's fortunately we've got wall-to-wall shows. Monday through Saturday we have the DFS strategy show at 9:15. We're still pumping out the NBA versions through the regular season. We've got live before lock, not one but two, Jake. We're running NBA and simulcasting MLB because we have the technology and we have the talent to run that out there. And then we've got the deep dive, which at this point now is focusing on MLB, but they are throwing out a few picks the first 10 minutes of the show during the regular season here as we wind it down. And then today you're going to get live before lock with Fast Eddie Fear, a monster basketball slate today, a huge 7 o'clock slate. No NBA tomorrow because it's a national championship game, and then they'll get another big slates on Tuesday, and Wednesday is just going to be freaking insane because as Jake got to see yesterday with the last day of the NHL, who knows who's playing or not playing at this point?
I played a bunch of guys that weren't playing. Like I was out, I was by my computer all day, and sure enough, I still had a bunch of guys that weren't playing in my NHL lineups. So NBA news is crazy. I always say, I don't envy those guys dealing with that every night. Dealing with it one day was enough for me. So have fun with that one. I will not be taking my talents to NBA DFS, I don't think, that day.
All right. We're on to our 2:00 games here. There's some nice 2:00 slates across the different sites. This first one, Oakland at Houston. You've got Brad Peacock, who definitely warrants some consideration going against Houston here. Houston is, going against the Oakland Athletics. The Athletics do have some power, but they also got some have some guys with some holes in their swing, especially without Matt Olson in this lineup. It really shortens things. I mean, you've got Kendrys Morales is batting cleanup today. Chad Pinder, who usually only goes against lefties and oftentimes gets pinch hit against righties, he's batting fifth for you today. Jerks and Profar 12th. Fagley and Loreno are down there. This feels like someone's missing. Oh, yeah, no Chris Davis. No Chris Davis. So talk to me about Brad Peacock here. Are you going to be preening with Brad in your lineups?
I'm going to get more of him, I think, as I continue to crunch more. Even when I project him for like 5 innings, like he's still getting well over 5 Ks. And man, this lineup is really, really tough. Or I should say it's really good for Peacock. It's tough if you're a Oakland A's fan. Bunch of righties. That's exactly what you don't want to do against Peacock. He's got crazy strikeout stuff in short bursts. So he used to be a reliever. You can't really give his strikeout numbers and project that same stuff for this season, because if he is going to be a starter, he's probably not going to be a guy that's going to go 6-7 innings very often. So what you're looking for here is like 5 innings, 6-7 Ks, and I think he's going to give you a good chance at the win as well. So yeah, I really like Peacock. I think it's a fine price when you factor in this lineup against him.
Right. On the other side, Mike Fiers has had a few good starts to begin this season here. He, your mileage may vary. This is not the best lineup to go against, but he's allowed pretty much no power. Now, that's not Mike Fiers' style, Jake, because as we well know, if we look back across 2017 and 18, he has a combined 203 WOBA to lefties and righties. Isolated power to lefties and righties. Just because he's checking in at 0.50 at this point in the season. The regression monster's coming, and he's hungry, Jake. Oh, is he hungry? This is a phenomenal matchup here for Houston. You've got literally everybody in the lineup. Springer, Altuve, Bregman, Brantley, Correa, the ever-pesky Yuli Gurriel, the absolutely fine Josh Reddick. You've got Robinson Chirinos, hit a home run last night. I called him out as one of the cheap power catchers. Hey, he's a cheap power catcher again today. Loving the Houston Astros here. I'm not getting any Fiers. Zero. There is no flame, but I'm getting a ton of Houston. Talk to me here about what you're seeing for your teams.
Yeah. So Fiers is a pretty easy guy for me to cross off here. He's really someone I only look at when he's pitching at home, or unless he's crazy cheap or something on the road. But 7,300, not a price that I need to get to Fiers. There's way better options. Houston's a tough matchup. There's really no strikeout upside either for Fiers, I don't think. He's someone that I think just benefits from pitching in O.co since he's gone over to Oakland, I think midseason last year. So I'll play him some there. Here, I don't think you need to. It gives up a ton of fly balls, hard contact. Houston's hitting their caps, and I'm assuming we've got them as probably the highest owned team today. So yeah, I'm right there with the chalk, assuming.
Yeah. I'm just looking. Sorry, I was spouting off the names of the projected lineup here. I forgot to hit refresh. Let me do that just for those of you that are not looking at a screen. So, because I said the names that aren't necessarily in there. The first 6 are the same, but the last 3 you've got Aledmys Diaz. Stassi is catching today. He still has some cheap power there, not as much as Chirinos. And then you've got Tony Kemp batting 9th as opposed to I can't remember who was in there before, but just know the bottom third of that lineup has changed. So not quite as extended of a lineup here, but Reddick batting 6 does help out a tiny bit for him. That's worth about 0.2, 0.3 extra at bats from being in the bottom third of the lineup, just that little move up. So I do like the top 6 there. I'm looking at it. If I run Scherzer with the field, I get Houston. If I run Scherzer at 60%, Houston drops out of my stack. So that's kind of interesting there, Jake.
They're just too cheap, I think, on DK. So, like, Scherzer's underpriced, I think, a little bit. Astros bats are all looking really nicely priced. So if you are going to, like, maybe I wouldn't play Houston with, like, a Scherzer-Ross combo. So that's something you might want to avoid just because that's going to be duped a bunch based on these projected ownerships. Or if you are going to Houston, you should, in your other stack or your other one-offs, play guys that people aren't really on. So that's how I would try to get different. You can play chalk and also be different with it, but just be aware of what you're doing if you are going to these Astros.
Yeah, that's interesting. So in a situation like this, like I even went and said, okay, I don't want to cut Scherzer down from where I'm at. How can I get some Astros in? So I went in on Fantasy Crunch and I gave everybody a double or a triple thumbs up. Each time you hit that thumbs up button, you get adding 8% or taking away 8% from whatever the projection is. They're still falling out for me. So what I do in situations like this is I'm going to earmark probably 15% of my lineups where I will just build Houston stacks outside of my main one just to make sure I get them in there. We're still early enough in the season where I haven't figured out how to rebalance everything and get everything in more or less in one crunch. So if I'm in a hurry because I'm on air, up till we'll get off here in about 15 or 20 minutes, but then I won't have very much time before lock. So if I have something I want, I will earmark certain lineups and just say, okay, run those separately if it's something you really want to get. And today, for me, Houston is something I really want to get. So just tips and tricks if you're starting to dip your toe into the mass multi-entry world.
Yeah, MME for MLB is very preferred for me, I should say. I don't know how I ever tried to play like 1 to 3 lineups in MLB. It seems like just a headache and a lot of losing nights where you're getting swept. So
yes, I lived in that world for a long time. The top heavy payout structures have eliminated that world for me.
Yeah. Got to take a shot at the big one.
Yep, just throwing that one out there. Okay, so next game here we've got Seattle number 3 in the major leagues for runs per game. Jake, did you see that one coming? I'm a Seattle fan, and I certainly did not. I'm going to drop into the chat here. We've got our Spotlight Hitters and Stacks article each day here by yours truly. Today it is the Mariners are my Spotlight stack. I really, really, really like this matchup for them going against Ivan Nova here. The reason I like it, and let's see who's in the lineup. Yep, it's going to work out. Oh, no Jay Bruce. Okay, that one's going to leave a little bit of a mark. I don't hate Daniel Vogelbach. He looks like a fire hydrant, literally. He's seemingly like about as wide as he is tall, but he has some massive power if he ever connects. He's been living in AAA for too many years, in my opinion, for the Mariners, but they just didn't have a spot for him. But the guys that they have batting 2, 3, 4, righty hitters, Haniger, Santana, and Encarnacion. Most gamers are going to look at this and they're going to say, Innova, okay, he's actually a decent pitcher against righties. I don't want to go there. That's fine. He's not an awesome pitcher against righties. His first start, his velocity's been down, Jake. Now, this is just one start, and yes, it was the first start of the season, but outside of when he came back from Tommy John surgery, he had never had experienced a drop like this in velocity at the beginning of any season. I went back and looked at that just because I was curious. He has now been in the major leagues for 10 years. He's 32 years old. I'm going with the Mariners here because I think enough people are not going to be looking at these guys in same-handed matchups, and especially now without Jay Bruce, that I'm willing to take a chance. I want to make sure I have at least 5%, and that's going to be well above the field, but I want 5% Mariner stacks. Focusing on the 2, 3, 4 hitters. And I don't mind Malik Smith because he is just super fast on the base paths.
Yeah, they're one of my favorite stacks.
Okay, maybe we'll go higher. Talk to me about this one.
Yeah, I mean, so you said the thing about Nova losing velocity. I didn't even check that. But yeah, that's even a better tick. I know, or I should say,
It's
a better
another
pick
thing
in
in
the
the favor
direction
of the hitters. Yeah.
for playing Seattle hitters. Yeah, you know what
Yes.
I'm saying. Easy for me to say,
Again,
but
just one start, but this hasn't happened to him before. So I went back and tried to look. Was it bad weather? Was it this, that? No. So I'm going to chalk this one up to aging curve. Will he increase it? Maybe.
yeah,
But what if we're onto something here?
right, exactly. So yeah, I really like Mariners bats. You love lefties against Nova, but I don't really ever have issues targeting righties against Nova either, especially in a stack. So he's a guy who gives up a ton of hard contact, especially to lefties, but still some to righties there. And I think these guys are going to put the ball in play for the most part. And yeah, I think they're just too low owned. So I'm all over Seattle. They're right up there with like Houston and KC for me.
All right. Let's see. They do have D Gordon in the lineup. He's been dealing with, I forget if it's back, wrist, whatever it was, but he's got 2 stolen bases in pinch hitting appearances. So he should be good to go in that one. Looking at the other side, going against Wade LeBlanc, your mileage may vary. Even though he doesn't have the best recent numbers against lefties, do not overlook Wellington Castillo. Yeah, last year it was a lost season for him. But 2, 3, and 4 seasons ago, we used to salivate when he had a chance. Just because who doesn't like beef Wellington? But except for all you non-meat eaters, which is okay, respect that lifestyle. But if you're looking for beef, you've got him batting cleanup today. It doesn't get much better than that. He's got Abreu in front of him, which is fantastic. I would treat him as a first baseman on FanDuel. We were talking, we throw out some FanDuel plays. At 2,500, hell yeah. Batting cleanup, I'm in. You've got him at 3,700 on DK, 76 on Fantasy Draft. Those are fine prices. Little bit spendy on Yahoo at 14 until you remember I'm getting a first baseman at my catcher spot for 14. Batting cleanup, I'll take it. So play him across the board is my main thought. What is your takeaway from any of the White Sox going against Mr. LeBlanc here?
I can kind of see both sides of it, and especially like one-off hitters. I don't mind targeting one-offs against LeBlanc.
He doesn't walk anybody, which makes it concerning for stacks.
Yeah, so he's kind of, for that reason, I kind of like him as a super low-owned guy that's also cheap. You look at the White Sox numbers versus lefties last year, they had a 20, or dating back to last year, factoring in this year in their few plate appearances, they have 27% K rate, under 100 WRC plus, they're at 94. They do have some power if you look at these individual hitters, but Moncada worse from the right side. And I think there is a little bit of strikeout upside, at least for his price here for LeBlanc. I think I've got him as being okay against righties. And if against this White Sox lineup who swings and misses with the best of them, I am actually playing some LeBlanc.
Okay.
So I've got him capped at like 18%. And if I get 15% of him, like I'll take that all day. I have no problem with that.
Now
He's not, I'm not banking on 25 points from him. I'll put it that way.
All right, now I want to see if LeBlanc's coming up in any of my stuff here.
I hear you're a fan on your laptop.
Oh yeah, sorry. It's
no, that's good. It means you're crunching.
It actually does. So.
Mine does the same thing.
LeBlanc is coming in for me at 2% of the 100 I'm running right now. So not a lot. Oh, I'm sorry. The new one is 8%.
Okay. So. Yeah, I mean, and I'm not playing 60% Wade LeBlanc. I don't think you need to if he's going to be 8% owned or whatever we have him at right now.
Yeah, and I've now got and the reason now I may have to go in and change this because I'm going to start looking at what stacks I'm not getting. I've got Clevenger and Scherzer both at 50%. That's pretty high. It's well above the field. It's double the field on Clevenger and another 10%. Or it's Scherzer's at 40. I'm at 50. If I start moving those guys down, I get more. I'll get more of the stacks that I want. So that's something I'll tweak there towards the end. But I'm now hitting out on 7 stacks, all capped, 4-man stacks, all capped at 15%. So I'm getting where I want to be. Now I just need to tweak their caps to move up the guys I want and move down the ones I don't want. And then hopefully I can get in Houston without doing that extra lineup like I described before. All right, we've got 2 more games here. We've got Chicago at Milwaukee. Bit of an offensive extravaganza there yesterday. You've got everybody's least favorite DFS pitcher, Kyle Hendrickson. Kyle Hendricks? I'm sorry. Is he good? Is he not good? Is he frustrating? How about all of the above? He checks every box for everybody. On the other side, you have Zach Davies. So pair of right-handers going against each other. Davies does have some issues with power allowed to lefties. Slightly getting it under control, but the problem is he doesn't strike anybody out. He also doesn't walk anybody. So here's a guy that's a bit of an enigma. He can have some good games, and then it can all go sideways for him. And you kind of get, he's a little more binary in some of his outcomes. I don't have, it looks like either pitcher from this, and I purposefully knocked Hendricks out. He's 12% in the field. He's coming in at 1% for me. But Davies is coming in at 0 for me, 2% for the field. So that means we probably should like some hitters here, Jake. Take it away.
Yeah, I think Rizzo jumps off the page for me as far as hitters go. You like Chris Bryant and Baez, Schwarber anytime he's against a not elite righty. I think I'm interested in that. I even like Descalso. Like he's just a guy I've always played probably more than I should have. His numbers against righties over the last couple of years are actually pretty good. So batting 7th, I think he might be a sneaky guy to end in or to add in to the end of your stack if you are stacking against the Brewers. Are the Brewers stud relievers rested here? That might be something we have to worry about. I know they had a really good bullpen last year. Maybe that was just Hader that I'm thinking of.
It is. They're not horrible this year, but let's see when they pitched. Yeah, they might be a little tuckered out. So last night you had Barnes with 18 pitches, Guerra with 24, Taylor Williams at 41. He also pitched Friday, so he's going to be out of the mix. And then you've got Alex Wilson who went for 27. Day before that, they had Albers went for 21, Chase Anderson 43. So I doubt we'll see Chase Anderson. And then Alex Claudio with 5. So they don't have as good of a bullpen as they did. Clearly, they've had to go to a couple longer relievers there, which were former starters for them, both in Chase Anderson and Junior Guerra. So not quite the lights out one, and they have been used the last 2 days. So I don't think we need to be overly concerned with their bullpen. But that is something you want to, be cautious about, because if you're looking at someone like, Yolis Chacin and you get some lefties against them, and then they come in with a fresh bullpen,
right?
That ends your stack, right?
Exactly.
There.
So that's something I've done more and more, or paid attention to more and more, and I usually forget about it at the beginning of seasons. But you shouldn't forget about that kind of thing because, it's great if your stack gets 5 runs against the starting pitcher, but like you said, they could bring in their stud reliever for 2 innings and shut everything down. So you want all your plate appearances to come against bad pitchers if you can. So target bad bullpens when in doubt.
So let's see. And then on the other side here, Yelich, Shaw, Moustakas, Thames. Let's go 1, 2, 3, 4. All lefties going against Hendricks. Now, the key thing to remember about Hendricks is he's, in general, splits neutral here, does a relatively good job of limiting power to both sides of the plate, but that's pretty darn good lineup. And I think, didn't Thames get like a pinch hit home run last night? That was just an offensive explosion of a game last night. But if I'm going to these guys, I want 2 through 5.
Yeah, I was hoping Hendricks would be a little bit chalkier. Whatever the field's kind of doing with him, I usually do the opposite. I can't stand him. So he's like 11% owned, it looks like. I think that's about right for him. So not going crazy with Brewers here, but I do have some Brewers stacks and very little Hendricks. He's a guy I don't mind targeting against, especially with really solid hitters like Yelich and Shaw and Moustakas. So that's where I'll be going here.
Last game of the night, we've got Adam Wainwright. And then you've got the old veteran, the crafty old veteran now at this point. And then the other side, you got the youngster, the southpaw in Stram. I don't know what to do with this game. I just don't. And I usually have a decent read on it. I don't really want the pitchers. Now, Stram is popular. He is coming in at 21%. Is that something you're willing to go to? I mean, we don't have a lot of a book on him in the big league yet, because obviously he's only made a handful of starts, but he's seen what 400 batters over the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, not a huge sample on him, but tough start, first time out, and he only got to 65 pitches. So I don't know if he's fully stretched out. That's my concern, even for 6,400 here. And it's just a really, really tough matchup against St. Louis. Like, you add in Goldschmidt to an already pretty good lineup that you had for St. Louis last season. Molina against lefties doesn't strike out. And then you just got a bunch of solid hitters. So I'm not crazy about Strom. I don't even think I've got any of him when I kind of project out his innings. So I'm okay with that. I don't think he's going to kill me here.
Yeah, and he's one of those guys. I'm going in right now. I'm setting him at 5, and I'm moving.
Yeah, he's double digit ownership here, which I'm a little bit surprised about. It's probably just the price and kind of the main value.
It really is. I mean, he's coming in middle of the pack on a point per dollar, but there are so few guys below 7,000 that he's popping up. Same thing with Wainwright. He's coming in at 10%. Okay,
Yeah.
I don't want him at more than 5 if I even get him. Okay matchup against San Diego, but let's remember, this is a better San Diego team than what we're used to seeing in the past. I mean, you've got Machado, you've got Ian Kinsler. I damn near had a heart attack on the show yesterday when I realized how good Hunter Renfroe is against righties for power. When the hell did that happen, Jake?
Yeah, right.
I mean, I always like him against lefties, but caught me off guard. He's been absolutely phenomenal. So those guys are all solid plays. So that kind of has me away from Wainwright, but I'm not really on any side in this one. Now, the great thing is 4:00 slate, 4-game slate. That's where this team comes into play. And at that point, I'm good with looking to Wainwright, but I'm also good with going with Machado, Renfroe, and Fernando Tatis if he's in the lineup.
Okay. Yeah. Well, just back to Strom quick. I think I misspoke. I actually am getting to some Strom. I know for me personally, he doesn't grade out that well, but I do weigh the projections on the site and like aggregate them based on what I come up with. So I am getting actually a little bit of Strom, but nothing crazy. I don't even think I'll get to where the field's at on him. So just wanted to kind of clear that up because I do like Cardinals bats against him as well. And then Wainwright, I think there's a pretty decent chance he's just washed.
Yeah, I've been saying that for a couple of years too. So.
Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe he is just completely washed. I mean, you look at that last start. I think he had a 5.5% swinging strike rate. He just can't miss bats, and that's kind of what you're playing him here for. It's not like he's free. He's almost 7K. There are some other options around his price.
So good 10, 11, 12 years ago, Jake.
Yeah. Right, exactly. So I don't know. I don't think it's that great of a matchup here for Wainwright. You added Machado to this Padres lineup that already had some power with some of these guys. No Cordero in the lineup, I see. That's a little bit disappointing. Did he get hurt or something? Why isn't he playing today?
That I don't know. I went to bed early last night, Jake.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't watch much baseball at all last night. I don't think I watched a second of it, actually. So yeah, that was one guy I wanted to see, but like Hosmer is the only lefty in there. So I don't think people will be on a ton of Padres bats here. And I think Wainwright might become a little bit more chalky as we get closer to lock here.
All right. We're going to hit on stacks. We also promised we'd talk a little bit of FanDuel. So here's the FanDuel pitching that I like. Scherzer is number one far and away. For me, let me get their pricing up. He is 11,900. If you want your direct pivot, it's going to be Clevinger. Now, the thing that Clevinger gets a slight boost on is I think he has a little bit better shot at the win than potentially Scherzer does in today's iteration. So those guys are both going to be up there. Those are the ones I like. If you're looking for point per dollar, I think you could put Chris Archer in play if you're trying to get a little bit different. If you go to Sean Newcomb, all of a sudden you're going to get a lot more freedom because he's just 7,700 there on FanDuel. We mentioned a couple of the cheap hitters. Let me just pop over here and see who else is cheap. Slate up. and then if you have any, you can throw them in as well.
Sure. Just pitching we're talking about right now?
I hit pitching. You
Okay.
can do your pitching, but I love the New York stack right now with Sanchez, Judge, and Gardner. That would be my number one stack on FanDuel. My number two is probably still going to be the Mariners, and then my number. This is where it's harder on these 12-game slates. Thankfully, we don't have to worry about Coors. My number three stack. This is late slate. Texas Rangers. So Mariners and Yankees are my early guys that are popping for me. What do you have here for FanDuel?
So I'm not playing FanDuel, so I just quickly looked over the pricing. Newcomb is the guy that sticks out to me a little bit on FanDuel. If he's on, there's a very good chance he gets the quality start here against a pretty brutal Marlins lineup outside of a couple guys. So 7,700, I think that's a good price there. Obviously, Scherzer, I think I'd be more willing to pay up on FanDuel just in general. One pitcher, you really got to make it count. And there's always some cheap bats on FanDuel, it looks like. So, like, it looks like Cleveland is pretty cheap on FanDuel. Some other guys, Naquin and Bowers for 2K and 2,900. So that might be a stack that you want to attack. Yankees, I like that call. Looks like they're a little bit more expensive, maybe tough to fit in with a guy like Scherzer. And then the Pirates, I have to imagine they are pretty chalky, though, on FanDuel, right?
Got too many windows open. Get to ownership. FanDuel. Let's look at some. Now, the neat thing about the popularity page here is we can sort by team, which is very helpful if you want to see where certain stacks are. So all I got to do is click over there on oh my gosh, Jake. 6%, 5%, 5%. Yeah, they're not very popular.
For who?
For the Pirates.
Really?
On FanDuel.
I think it would be pretty chalky. So I just looked at the FanDuel pricing for 2 minutes. So I don't know. There's probably other teams that I'm missing that are underpriced. But yeah, I like that over on FanDuel then, especially to fit in Max, who
looks like Minnesota is probably the number one stack right now on FanDuel.
And then I want to throw in also San Diego on FanDuel. Looks like they are really cheap outside of Machado. So yeah, going up against the possibly washed Adam Wainwright.
All right. I think that kind of hits everything. Got a little FanDuel, got a little stack talk. We're going to dip on out of here. We'll be available in the premium Slack if you need us. Of course, we have the popularity and the player projections are all updated. We've gotten for the early slate, which goes through the 2 o'clock games. A couple lineups have come in for the 4 o'clock slate. So, of course, we will be updating projections for that as well. We have Fast Eddie Fear is going to be doing live before lock for NBA. He might even do 2 shows today. For sure, he's going to do the late show, but I bet if you hit him up on Twitter, you can convince him to go do an afternoon show. That's at Fast Eddie Fear. And just remind him, there's only the national championship game tomorrow. So I'm sure that will convince him. Come on and do a show there. We have NASCAR going off at 2 o'clock. We have ownership projections for that as well as projections. So I've got some lineups to make because it's Bristol, baby. The last great Coliseum. That's the only NASCAR track I've ever been to a race at. And it was very, very cool. Very, very cool, Jake. I highly recommend going. And I had my friend Stevie TPFL. You guys know him out there. He's a NASCAR correspondent now, officially.
Very cool
for a NASCAR. But he had me come down with him, and we got hot passes, which means you can walk out into the infield during the races and stand right next to pit road as they're changing tires and stuff. It's a very, very cool experience. I'm spoiled forever. I will only want to go in when I can go to the infield now. So we'll have to see.
Side, right?
An experience unlike any other. Bring earplugs or ear head whatever you go, noise protection devices because it is loud there. And I'm old.
Yeah, it seems like the cars go pretty fast. I would imagine they're
it's I think what do they do, like 180 there. It's not really, it is a short track, but it's also they have a pretty impressive bank angle somewhere between, I think it's between like 30 and 40%. I think it's kind of like 33% or something like that, which means they can go very fast in the curves. And it sort of plays a little bit like a super speedway, but it's a short track. So it's unlike any of the other ones. And If you think hockey is variant, if you think baseball is variant, if you think NASCAR is variant, this is just about as variable as the restrictor plate races. So we have some excellent content behind the paywall. The NASCAR projections, those are from Alex and Tom, same ones they're using. And
Yeah, I might fire those up as well.
Yeah, we have ownership projections for them as well. And then we've got Phil, who's holding court in chat right now, giving personalized advice, and he's got a couple articles up.
And Llama Trainer giving out the picks as well in chat.
We have Llama Trainer. He is everywhere for us. He really everywhere. Is. All right, with that, gamers, we're going to get on out of here.
One more thing. Yes. I just getting closer to where I'm going to be at. So just want to kind of clear up as far as exposures go. Ross, looks like I'm going to be about 10 to 15%, so under there. I'm actually getting some of both Hess and Eflin, which I don't know how I feel about. Those guys are going to come down a little bit for me, but kind of dismiss both of those guys, and maybe I will end up with a few shares here and there to try to get some different lineup constructions. Max, he's going to be my highest owned pitcher by a good margin, and everyone else is going to be in like the 30 to 10% range. So just wanted to clear those things up. Nothing much has changed as far as bats go.
All right. And then speaking of bats, I'm going to drop it in the Slack one more time. I've got the the free Spotlight Hitters and Stacks article featuring one from the main slate and one from the late slate. There are other stacks I like. Those are behind the paywall. With that, gamers, you can follow Jake at JKari over there on Twitter. I am at EMAC DFS. And, of course, it is Awesemo_COM. Good luck, gamers.